Rumor has it that the Pittsburgh Penguins are trying to bring back one of their longtime veteran players. We'll discuss the possibility and could it work? Coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, today we're taking a look at the Pittsburgh Penguins and the possibility of them bringing back one of their most popular players, teammates, and a longtime NHL veteran, and that's goaltender Marc-Andre Fleury. There's been reports recently that Pittsburgh at least has reached out to Vegas trying to discuss the possibility of a trade and bringing back the longtime goaltender back to be a Penguin to finish out his NHL career. Of course, we know that the Pittsburgh Penguins are a team that's gone through some new management. Obviously, we had Jim Rutherford resign, and they just announced a new hiring of President of Hockey Operations Brian Burke, as well as new NHL General Manager Ron Hextall. Now, word has it, and this came from a combination of sources. I believe it started with Bob McKenzie of TSN. It's been on The Athletic as well by Rob Rossi, who covers the Pittsburgh Penguins too, talking about the fact that the Penguins apparently reached out to Vegas. Now, this was rumored to take place while they were without a GM, so this is after Rutherford resigned. So this would have been their interim GM, and along with ownership, trying to reach out here. Now, clearly that shows a big signal there that they're not happy with the goaltending, and they're not confident that the goaltending that they have now will get them to what they need to be competitive and contend for a Stanley Cup. Now, we've seen the Pittsburgh Penguins go through some different streaks this year, and it's believed that Brian Burke and Ron Hextall are definitely going to be trying to make a few deals here before the NHL trade deadline to get this team in a best situation as possible to take another kick at the can at being able to contend for a Stanley Cup. After they were hired, we heard the interviews, especially a lot from Brian Burke through Sportsnet, where he was working at the time. He himself said that they definitely will be looking to make moves, and they want to give this team another shot at contending before they really even consider going down the road of a rebuild. We know that ownership wants another shot at winning. They're not convinced yet that they need to do a teardown and start the process of doing a rebuild. And they don't want to look to their veterans like Crosby and Malkin and Letang too, and consider having to move them off to start that process. They're not ready to do that. And even if they do decide to do that down the road, doesn't mean they want to get rid of those veteran players either. They may very well want to retire as Penguins, and that's a difficult conversation and something that they're going to have to decide on after the fact. But Brian Burke himself said that they want to give this team this year, see how it goes, and then they'll make the tough choices in the offseason if things don't go well. But if things go well and they can get this team back, even if they don't win a cup, but if they're showing that they can still be right there and hang with the top teams, they're going to continue to give them shots to win before they go down that road. Now, of course, we know, looking at this roster, that the Penguins have a fair bit of firepower up front if they're all playing healthy and they're all playing at their best. I mean, you have Crosby, you have Malkin, you have Jason Zucker, you have Jake Gensel, you have Brian Rust, you have Brandon Tanev's having a good season. They could maybe use a little bit more in the bottom six to maybe level things out. Goaltending hasn't been overly great, and the blue line to a degree, certainly could possibly look to be improved as well. I mean, some of the guys they brought in weren't exactly defensive, top guys. When you look at the guys like Mike Matheson, Cody Ceci, it really wasn't an upgrade over what went out, like Justin Schultz, for example. So clearly there's some deals to be made if they can find the right pieces. But if they're going to try to bring in Marc-Andre Fleury from Vegas, it's certainly going to be costly. Now, when you look at Vegas, you look at Pittsburgh, they have one thing in common, and they said they don't really have any salary cap space. So if there's going to be a trade, it would have to be pretty well equal money or darn close to it going out each way to level things out. Now, we know Marc-Andre Fleury obviously has some control over the situation based on the clauses in his contract, but I do think if he were asked to be traded, Pittsburgh's probably one of the few places that he would have no problem going back to. Many believe he would like to return there to finish his career and retire as a Penguin anyway. I guess we'll only really have to wait to be seen if that's something that he really feels or not, but that is the belief around many in the NHL community. But where he's making $7 million, the Pittsburgh Penguins would have to be looking to send $7 million in other contracts to the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, you'd have to think that Vegas is going to want a goaltender back. They have Jerry and DeSmith, who they're not completely happy with. So one of those goaltenders would have to be going the other way. Look at the roster, and you really look at who the Penguins would be willing to part with and who would be contract and money-wise making sense for the deal just from a money standpoint, not necessarily what Vegas would want, but you have to look at what makes sense. What could they actually do To me, you're looking at the forward group and you're looking at probably Brian Rust. I think Rust would be traded before Gensel, before Zucker, and of course before Crosby and Malkin, no doubt. Brandon Tanev is a different kind of player, so I really think he would be one of the preferred forwards if they had to, that they would choose to try to move from. And of course on defense, you have to think they'd love to move on from Mike Matheson. Personally, I don't think, though many others in the organization are probably too fond of the contract after Jim Rutherford made that deal for him. So clearly those are two of the top players off the roster, but in that group, and then of course a goaltender, which likely would be Jerry, making more money. So you got Tristan Jerry makes $3.5 million, you got Brian Rust makes $3.5 million, and you have Mike Matheson making $4.875 million. So a combination of two of those players would technically get the deal done. The cheapest of them all being the two 3.5 contracts of Jerry and Rust going to Vegas for Marc-Andre Fleury. That would be even money going both ways. They could make that happen. Now, I don't know for sure that that's what's offered, but there is word that Vegas, obviously whatever Pittsburgh was offering or kind of getting around to, that they were not really interested, and they kind of rejected the deal for whatever was presented. I'm not sure how far things got. We don't know that. But at the end of the day here, we know that Vegas at some point will be interested in moving Fleury. Maybe now it's not the best time for them, clearly, but at the same time here, they could use some help in other areas as well. And if this deal does not go down now, I do think that the odds go up drastically when we get to the offseason before the expansion draft, especially. So if you take a look at that, I mean, obviously in that scenario, Vegas would be having Leonard and Fleury. It would probably do them well to move on from Fleury before the expansion draft. They can protect Leonard. This certainly makes things more easy in that regard to not lose a big asset. And then, of course, from the Pittsburgh standpoint, they would probably be most at risk to lose a forward anyway. If they move Rust, that might prevent them from having to do that as well. They could protect Fleury and obviously have to expose a guy like maybe Casey DeSmith if he's the one that stays. So if this deal does not go down in season, I can certainly see it being reevaluated and talked about again during the offseason. But my only concern is that if the Penguins cannot bring Fleury back and the new management team, along with the existing people that are still in the organization and ownership, don't have confidence in this goaltending tandem, maybe they go out and make another deal, and that kind of closes the door on a Marc-Andre Fleury return. Now, there's a possibility. If you look at some of the other teams, there are some goaltenders that could possibly become available, although at this point, I don't think there's a lot out there, but there are some that might be able to get the deal done here that Pittsburgh might want to look at. Now, if they're coming in on a short-term contract, maybe they only come in and they don't stick around. Difficult to say. But, certainly some interesting things here to see about Pittsburgh. I mean, we know that there's going to be deals. It's just a matter of what those deals turn out to be. I'm not sure it's going to be too long before we see something happen with this team. I know Hextall and Burke are just getting started. I don't think we're going to see a trade, probably not like in a few days or anything like that. I would think, within the next week or two, it is possible we could start to see some roster movement, and then we'll kind of go from there. But let me know, what are your thoughts on the possibility of the Pittsburgh Penguins reacquiring Marc-Andre Fleury? And if you had to give up a combination of Tristan Jerry, Mike Matheson, and Brian Rust, two of those three players have to go. You have to think Jerry's one of them. Let me know what your thoughts are on that combination. And would you do that deal if you're Pittsburgh? Would you do that deal if you're Vegas? And if not now, could it make sense for the offseason and have Marc-Andre come back and retire at Pittsburgh Penguin when he's all said and done? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.